Okay, great and powerful wizards are stable, but he said his statement is that generally speaking, these big powerful wizards, by the time they get to the end, what they actually do to accomplish in terms of the big finale of the series is fairly small. And am I planning something like that for Dresden? Yes and no, is the answer to that. The problem with most of the wizards that do that is simply they aren't the central character of the series. I mean, Gandalf, not the central character of the series. That was Sam, not Frodo. Frodo was not the central character. Frodo was a junkie who was along for the ride for the most part. Sam was the man. It's similar in classical wizards with characters like Merlin. Arthur's the center of that story for the most part. There have been Merlin stories, and so on. But am I going to go all the way to the end of this to have Dresden be the one who, pushes the button that says, destroy the universe? Yes, no. It's not going to be anywhere near that simple. Hopefully, if I do it right, which I don't know because I've never written a 20-book epic fantasy before. Hopefully, if I do it right, we'll set it up to where if it had been anybody else, it would have ended in disaster. But because it's Dresden, we all get to keep getting along. It's sort of kind of what I try and come out with him. If you're doing your job as a writer, by the time you get to the end of your story, any other individual other than that character who's making things happen, if somebody else had been there, it all would have ended horribly wrong. If you're doing your job right, hopefully I'll be able to do the same thing. But like I said, it's big. I've never written a big story like that before. In the blue.
What sort of thing, if you could go back to the first and second novel, would you like to change to help currently, like the sun to the Hagrid, change particular rules or items?
Oh, what things would I go back in the earlier novels to change to help things now? I don't know. I mean, I would probably scrap the first 2 books completely and rewrite from the ground up everything about it, which would probably be a disaster. I've learned that going back and rewriting a novel doesn't work anywhere near as well as you think it should. So at this point, I'm happy to accept flaws and imperfections from early on because it just means, oh, wait a minute, now I have a good direction to go to keep things moving the way I want them to go. I probably would never have figured out that wizards, the whole thing about them recovering from injury has a lot to do with them living a long time because they've got far groovier telomeres than any of us have. Their DNA copier works better than ours does. I probably wouldn't have figured that out if somebody hadn't pointed out, hey, I've been keeping track of the books, I'm a physical therapist, and I just wanted to let you know that in the past 5 years, Dresden's aggregated about 7.5 years of therapy. And you need to be aware that this injury would have required this kind of surgery, and then this kind of recovery, and then another surgery to correct that, and then still more therapy. And by the time we get to that, he's already been busted up by the next book, which would have done this and this and that. I'm like, okay. So obviously, wizards are cooler than that. I have to figure out how. Okay, that's why, and that's a good reason. You know what? I'll tie this into. That's why they live a long time too. Awesome. This is working out great. As long as I can stay on my mental toes, I guess we'll be all right. Right here.
My question is, has any of your characters surprised you or done something you weren't expecting them to do, develop a certain way?
Okay, have any of my characters surprised me or done something I wasn't expecting them to do or developed in a way I didn't want them to go? Those people work for me. Occasionally they are irascible, and I have to make sure to give them good motivations to do the things that I need them to do. And occasionally they just kind of come out cooler than I thought they would be. Butters was just going to be my kind of off-the-wall one-shot. I want an Emmy with a sense of humor because I always like those characters. I've seen Relic, I've seen Prophecy, and those characters are fun. Which, if you haven't seen those movies in a while, go back. Those Emmys are hilarious. After I wrote it, I'm like, okay, this guy is just so zany. I've got to use him again somewhere because I hadn't really planned him. I hadn't planned Butters out at all. I just said, oh, I need an Emmy here. I need an Emmy with a sense of humor. Okay, and I built this guy together real quick. minutes while I was watching the end of probably a Star Wars movie and said, okay, let's go, and wrote it. But he came out so neat, I'm like, okay, I've got to use him again. I got to find a good place to have this guy. And figured, what better sidekick for a wizard going up against a gang of necromancers who animate the dead than a medical examiner whose job is to deal with them all the time. Yet there would be absolutely no real help in any professional sense. I always like to plan things for Dresden out like that. It's like, well, how can I give him a sidekick that'll be great company and thematically appropriate, yet not actually offer any true assistance? But that's just kind of how he rolls. In the back, in the black shirt, please. If I could pick any actor to play Harry and Thomas, who would I pick? Oh man, I'd probably pick a mid-1970s Harrison Ford for Harry, because I'm happy to pick actors from other times who I can't possibly get. It's only a matter of time before technology makes that possible, before we can actually have a 1970s Carrie Fisher starring across from a 1955 John Wayne. It'll happen one day. But if I had to pick somebody who's actually working now, I'd probably go with Captain Tight Pants for Harry, just because he's got a great accent for it, and he would do fine in that role. As far as Thomas, that's a harder call. Thomas in my head is the older brother from Lost Boys. Jason, what's his name? Jason Patrick, who doesn't look that good anymore. I might also go with the guy who played Bryce in the first couple of seasons of Chuck. Was actually very close to Thomas in my head, except his hair was too short. But other than that, he looked pretty close. And now everybody's going, huh? Who? It's like, wow, I have out obscure referenced this room. Wow.
White collar guy.
Is he in that?
Yeah, I
is he
think
in
so.
that now? Okay, I wasn't a white collar fan.
Matt
Bomer.
You are. So.
Matt Bomer.
Matt Bomer. Yeah. Now we know. In the back. Okay, did Good Bob make it out? Is Bad Bob still around? Is spoilers for the end of this book, which a lot of people here haven't gotten to read yet. And even if it wasn't totally inappropriate to go completely spoiler happy on this audience, I'm not gonna tell you. Because that's my job as a professional storyteller. I give you some resolution on some things, and I leave other questions still hanging, and that way you buy the next book, and they don't take my house away. Yes, sir, right here.
What took you the extra time to finish this book? Not that I'm complaining.
What took me the extra time to finish this book? This one was really hard to write because Dresden spends a whole big chunk of it not really able to communicate with very many people, which means I can't write a whole bunch of snappy dialogue, which is, the easiest, funnest part of my job as a writer. There was a lot of description to be written and so on, and that's grindingly slow for me. That was part of it, was getting Dresden out of kind of that quandary. Part of it was actually figuring out, oh, wait a minute, the actual plot that I thought was happening is not exactly the plot that I thought was happening. And that only came together in the last month or so. A lot of it was that this book is longer than most of the other ones. In fact, it's longer than all the previous Dresden Files books. At the end, also life happened. I had my kid move out on me, and all of a sudden I wasn't a full-time dad anymore. That was weird. That was a rebalancing issue to be dealt with. There were a bunch of different things, finally I did get it done. I remember having to call up my editor and say, this just isn't going to happen. And my editor said, Jim, you're a creative person. You people are squirrely.